Heather Koga. I'm the Senior Advocacy for Electoral Reform Officer at Zimbabwe Election Support Network. Okay, I was part of an election observation and learning mission to the Kenya elections, which took place on the 9th of August. And in our experience, we noted that there are a lot of lessons that we can learn as Zimbabwe and as Africa from how the elections were conducted. And when I say lessons, it could be positive and negative as well. Things that we should avoid is what happened in Kenya. So maybe starting with the positives, we noted that in terms of logistics, the Electoral Management Body, the IEBC, standing for Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, to a very large extent, I think they were very well organized. In the morning when the polling stations opened, the majority of those that we observed, we noted that everything was in place and on time. They opened on time, and all the material needed was also there on time. And one of the lessons was that the media were allowed into the polling stations. So that demonstrated a very high level of transparency and flexibility. I think it is a lesson that we can take, since we don't allow the media here in Zimbabwe. I think it is a good thing. The only setback could be that maybe if there's too much of the media inside the polling station, it can become overcrowded, and it can result in noise which could disrupt the polling process, and it could become like a mini conference room, media conference room. So maybe we allow the media in, but then we also limit the numbers. I think that would be a great thing to do. And then in terms of organization, as I noted, the polling stations were well organized. And even in terms of security, we had security officers outside the polling stations. And there was very minimum disruption caused by security issues. And then we also noted that to a large extent, political parties managed to put agents in most of the polling stations that we observed, and also from the reports from other observers and statements issued by other observers. Political parties, there was political party agents presence was very high in all the polling stations. And then in terms of civic and voter education, I think we could say that it was a bit limited, because you could tell from the way people were showing some confusion outside polling stations, not knowing where they are supposed to go. So I think that points to poor civic and voter education. And in our interactions with other civil society organizations, they also pointed out that in terms of resources, many organizations were not well resourced on time to be able to conduct effective and efficient civic and voter education. Then one of the highlights of my visit to Kenya was when we visited the registrar, the office of the registrar of political parties. I think in Zimbabwe it's something that it's a conversation that has just started, that we need to register and regulate political parties. But so far, from our interactions with the political parties themselves, they are saying that they are resisting that move, because they have their own doubts about such a scenario. But from our meeting with the Office of the Registrar of Political Parties, we noted that they are doing some very good work, and they are acting more like the coach for political parties, and they are having positive results from that move. So I think this is something that we can emulate if we take time to understand how they are doing it. I think it's something that we can also bring home. And then there's the issue about the diaspora vote. Kenya also instituted the diaspora vote. It's still a bit limited. I think about 5 neighboring countries where they have high populations of Kenyans, and also a few countries overseas. So I think they are doing it through their embassies, and some of the IEBC officials, they actually went to those countries to conduct the polls. In Zimbabwe, we have been discussing this for some time, and as ZESNI, it is our belief that the diaspora plays a very important role, especially in the economic dynamics of their country of origin. So it is also noble that they are also given that opportunity to also be able to participate in democratic processes. And then in terms of the prisoners' vote, we understand in Kenya they also do prisoners' vote, but they only vote for the president. That just that one constituency. I think it is also something that we can also consider, especially for those types of prisoners, like those who are about to finish their terms, and other less dangerous types of prisoners who are not on death row or on life sentence. I'm not sure if you have other things that you want me to explain on.
Maybe we can dwell more on the diaspora vote. I think it's one of the contentious issues in Zimbabwe. It's been talked about for a very long time. How important is it, and do you think maybe we have what it takes to institute that?
I think it's important, as I noted, that most of these people are still actively involved. Even when we do our discussions, like on Twitter Space and on other platforms, many of the people in the diaspora will be there contributing. So I think they still have a stake in the country and in how we do things. And economically, most of them, they are sending us those stipends. And yeah, I believe, I'm not into economics, but I believe whatever their contribution is quite significant to our country. So I want to believe that it is something that is doable, as long as we do it in phases. We don't just start by saying everyone out there can start voting, but just like what Kenya did, we can identify those countries where we have the highest populations of Zimbabweans who could be interested in voting. And then we could do it incrementally. We start with a few, and then in the coming elections we add more as the resources allow and as the planning allows.
Okay, maybe now let's switch over to I know you talked about how free the elections were, but from a CSO point of view, how was the CSO participation in these elections? Were they operating freely? I know back home here in Zimbabwe we've got a lot of issues when it comes to CSOs participating in elections. How was the situation there, and what are the lessons drawn maybe that you can pass on to the likes of ZEC or even the powers that be?
From our understanding, the CSOs were quite, they were participating freely. We managed to visit the ELOG, it's called the Election Observer Group. It's the biggest citizen observer group, and it's a CSO. I think it's just like ZESNI, the ZESNI of Kenya.
Okay.
So we visited that one, and then they explained to us how they work and how they were deploying several observers throughout the country. It appeared to us that they were not restricted in any way, and they were doing their work transparently. And they are also working with a number of other civil society organizations, and they instituted the election situation room, which is like a platform It's actually a physical platform where there are representatives of civil society organizations. So it's instituted maybe a month or so before the elections, and then maybe a few weeks after the elections. And so they'll be in that room receiving messages from their observers and from the public as well about this electoral situation in different places. And if need be, then they can escalate these cases to responsible authorities. Let's say there's violence taking place in a certain area, they can alert the police in that area. So it's just about gathering information about the environment, the electoral environment in different places. So I think that is a very good way. I think in Zimbabwe we did it in 2018, but I think 2023 we may need to do it on a much larger scale, just like what was happening in Kenya. I think we have what it takes. What is just needed is that understanding and that willingness to implement what needs to be implemented. When I look at the issue of the results management, of course, Kenya did it in the 7 days. I think it was 6 days, of which 7 was the allowable number of days. But then we noted that there were people were now a bit impatient with the process. I think even if we do it within the allowable number of days, it's also important to have regular updates. If that had happened in Kenya, I'm sure the impatience would have been less. So for us, we are saying let's emulate what happened, but then let's also have regular updates so that people know what is happening and they consider the process to be transparent. So to a large extent, yes, the IEBC was well organized and it conducted its work very well. But on the results management, there was a bit of a setback. So for Kenya, I think they had 22 million registered voters and then about 56 turned out. And they were complaining and saying this is the lowest ever in a long time. So I can only assume that usually what causes voter apathy is the lack of confidence, either in the commission or in other institutions and stakeholders who are directly involved with elections. So for Kenya, I can't really point to say this is what caused the voter apathy. But I think maybe things like voter education can go a long way in addressing voter apathy, just to make sure that people understand what is the importance of voting. Why should I be coming out to vote on election day itself? So in Zimbabwe, I think most of the time we actually get lesser figures than what happened in Kenya. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to make sure that people have confidence in the electoral process itself. I think that is the major thing that will make them want to come out and vote.
So, what is ZESNI doing in as far as voter education is concerned?
ZESNI, we actually have a department dedicated to voter education. Right now, as I speak, I have colleagues who are out there on an outreach, mobilizing people to go and register to vote. So there are a lot of activities that we do physically, going out into the communities, educating people about their need to vote, the right to vote, why they should vote, educating them on the requirements for voting, that you need an ID, you need to do this, where do you go if you want to register to vote, why is it important, and also the misinformation and disinformation that goes around. We also try to counter that by giving people the right type of information on voting. So we are there physically in throughout the country, and we also have a presence on social media. We have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter space where we share information and try and make people understand why they should register and why they should vote.
Thank you so much.
For these and other stories, visit our website www.263chat.com. Follow us on Twitter @263chat and like our Facebook page 263chat.